Hello, I'm Stewart Bridle, Channel Manager for Horror Channel, and it's an absolute honor and pleasure for me to be joined by a true icon of genre, someone whose career has already spanned over 4 decades in film and TV on such productions as Psycho 4, Critters 2, adaptations of Stephen King's Sleepwalkers, The Stand, The Shining, and TV series such as Amazing Stories, She-Wolf of London, Tales from the Crypt, and very fittingly, Masters of Horror. He's a writer, director, producer, showrunner, broadcaster, and podcaster. But more important than any of that, he is now the recipient of this year's Grimmfest and Horror Channel Lifetime Achievement Award. It is the amazing Mick Garris. How are you doing, sir?
So great, Stuart. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with you, and I only wish I were on your side of the globe right now.
Oh, we all wish that as well. We all wish that as well. So I want to just sort of talk briefly about your career and just talking about how you got started, first of all, because before you became a filmmaker yourself, you were already on the sets of some very sort of famous, legendary movies, and you already talked to a lot of people in the industry. I mean, you were there on the sets of The Thing, The Fog, and The Howling, and sort of and that was way better, say, before you made your own stuff. How did you get sort of started?
Well, first, I was a journalist, and I interviewed a lot of my idols and had a little talk show on a pay TV channel in Los Angeles called the Z Channel. And people like John Carpenter and Steven Spielberg were guests on the show. But then I applied for a job at this company called Star Wars Corporation. And I became their receptionist. And so I would answer the phone, "Star Wars, may I help you?" And so for the grand sum of $150 a week, they asked me to become R2-D2's operator. So I operated him on the Oscars that year.
Oh, really?
The only time I've ever been or will be to the Oscars. And so I started helping write press releases and things and started doing publicity, and ended up getting hired doing specialized publicity because of my familiarity with the genre press, which I wrote for. So I got a job at Avco Embassy at the time. They were doing The Howling and The Fog and Escape from New York and Scanners. So I kind of hired myself to do these making of documentaries where I'd get to be on the set, interview these people, and just ask questions that I was interested in as a fan. And it gave me the opportunity to see how pieces of footage are put together into telling a narrative, and an opportunity to just see behind the curtain and how it worked in the genre that has been my passion as long as I've been watching things. So that was kind of the beginning of it. And then I got a job doing publicity at Universal, where I met Steven Spielberg. Had been a guest on my Z Channel show. I ended up doing specialized publicity on E.T. and Poltergeist. And so we were shooting the making of The Goonies in Oregon on the first day of shooting. And I'm interviewing Spielberg, and he says, "Yeah, you must be doing a lot of these things." And I said, "I'm trying to do less because trying to make a go of it as a writer." And he said, "Oh, really? I've got this series we're going to do called Amazing Stories."
Right.
At that time in Los Angeles, his readers were reading a sample script of mine that they really liked and recommended me. And that there's the very long story of how I got my first shot to write for Steven Spielberg, the first guy to hire me as a screenwriter.
Yeah, that's a pretty great start and to an amazing career. I mean, just looking at your filmography, I mean, obviously, you're probably one of the only directors in Hollywood to have Stephen King on speed dial. Probably, I mean, you've done a lot of you've done a lot of productions, adaptations of his work, from Sleepwalkers to The Stand to The Shining, as we mentioned, Bag of Bones, Riding the Bull. I mean, what draws you as a filmmaker to his work?
Well, I've always loved his writing, and it's the people. We seem to have a lot in common. We're a few years apart in age, but not that many. And we have some similar touchstones culturally. We grew up on the Twilight Zone and comic books and Hammer films and all of that. But also, we were raised by divorced mothers. We were raised in near poverty, if not exactly poverty. And so we had similar backgrounds in that regard. But I think we have a lot of the same tastes. And we both realize that good horror is good drama first, good stories, good characters first, that just has the added ingredient of tension, suspense, and terror. You know, those are things that work best if they're set in a very real world that we all live in. And having done Sleepwalkers together, he enjoyed that process so much that when The Stand came along, that's where we really got to work closely together and became friends. And that was just massive. And so we've had a good run. It's been a few years, but hopefully there will be some more in the future.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, let's just go back to The Stand, because that must have been a massive undertaking of a project for you. I mean, it's huge. I mean, 8 hours of television. It was a big television event at the time. Huge cast, epic story to adapt. I mean, how do you approach that as a filmmaker?
Well, a lot of pre-production, but the thing is, you have to plan. It was 100 days of shooting. It was 5 months of post-production. So you just have to take it a day at a time. You have to trust that you have the best crew possible. You work out the schedule well in advance. Every weekend I would sit down and do my shot list for the entire week that was coming. And a lot of the planning you had to do on the run, because it was shot in so many places all over the United States. There were locations I never saw except in photographs, maybe some videos, until I got there to shoot. So you just had to be ready to roll with the punches, be prepared, but also be open to the fact that change is going to happen. And know that you work one day at a time. And the director and the assistant director are really the only people who think in terms of what is happening before your shoot today and after your shoot. Everybody else, it's their role. If you're an actor or if you're a makeup effects artist, it's this and that. But context is key. You have to make notes to yourself that this scene you're shooting now might lead into a scene that you're shooting in 3 months, or might have come from a scene that you haven't shot yet and it's going to be 4 months from now. So that context is something that's the hardest job for a director to have. But preparation and flexibility are the things that are most important when it comes to something as vast as that.
Exactly. I mean, just skipping forward now to what was a huge project for you, and it was Masters of Horror. What a landmark show that was. I mean, you got such a range of amazing, legendary talent, some of which unfortunately have been lost to us in recent years, like Stuart Gordon and Toby Hooper and Larry Cohen, but also you had Dario Argento and Joe Dante, John Carpenter. How did such a, and yourself, of course, and how did that all come together?
Well, the original roots of it was a series of dinners that I started to have. Every now and then we'd get together at Directors Guild functions or festivals like Grimmfest, and we'd get to know each other, hang out with each other, and we would always say, wouldn't it be great to all get together for dinner or something? I realized nobody's going to take this in hand and do it. And so I did. I spent a week calling a dozen filmmakers in the genre and said, let's get together, and trying to find a time that would be perfect to have an evening free where all 12 of us could do it. And we did, and it was great. And the next one took an hour to organize. So it was great. But at that first one, Guillermo del Toro was one of the 12 people, along with, John Carpenter, Toby Hooper, Stuart Gordon, John Landis, Joe Dante, Don Coscarelli. It was a great first time. And there was a party at the table next to us that were celebrating a birthday. And at the end, Guillermo del Toro and we all joined in singing happy birthday. And Guillermo stands up and says, "The Masters of Horror wish you a happy birthday." And so that's how we took on this ironic name that was meant to be funny.
Oh, fantastic.
And then we were having those dinners and all talking about, the foibles of our various occupations, and came up with the idea of the inmates running the asylum. And I put together the concept of doing an anthology show, giving all of these guys complete creative control. and holding the key to the madhouse. And so we went pitching it to production companies saying, we can give you the best filmmakers in the world in the horror genre, but you have to piss off. You have to not interfere. You know, there are things we won't do because of, you know, we understand there are standards and practices, and there are places we wouldn't want to go anyway. And, but you have to, if we give them complete creative control, you will get Tobe Hooper and John Carpenter and all these people. So we pitched it to 3 companies. All 3 of them said yes. The first one, we sat in the room with Anchor Bay and they said, how much and when can we get started? And we were off and running.
Well, we thank you for an amazing job on that series. It's a landmark, and there's some amazing stuff in there. But just go back to yourself. I mean, what sort of draws you as a creator to sort of genre and horror in general? What is it that appeals to you working in that kind of area?
Well, I like being taken by surprise, but I've also always felt like an outsider. I was not the popular kid in school. I was not, an athlete, but I was also always interested in the internal and in darkness and in fear. My parents split up at a fairly early age, kind of on my own a lot, although I had siblings. I was always an outsider, and I was always drawn to that. I started writing short stories and making little 8mm movies, all of them in the horror field, when I was 12 years old. You know, my interest is not just in that horror field, but it seems to be where my creative output most lies. And even in terms of, I have a new book out called These Evil Things We Do. I also write fiction as well. And just stories of the dark, big rubber monsters don't scare me. They're fun to watch, but once the credits roll, you walk out and you're fine. But the things that dig deep, starting with movies like Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Omen, and things that feel human and personal, that's when it gets real. And that's what I like. And I've always was kind of a dark child in that my imagination took me to places that the sunnier friends among mine did not understand. But I think that's something that binds us as well in festivals like Grimmfest. You don't have comedy movie festivals, you don't have Western movie festivals, but you have horror movie festivals. And it's a great bonding agent for people who are mostly outsiders.
Yeah, that's fantastic point. And on behalf of all the other dark children, thank you very much for all that you do. So it kind of gets a bit childish when we get to talking about sort of lifetime achievement, because obviously you've got so much more to come in all the work that you do with your podcast, and you've just released Nightmare Cinema last year and things like that. But sort of your work sort of so far, has there been anything that's been particularly a favorite or sort of the most sort of rewarding experience?
Well, you commit yourself body and soul to everything you do because it's so hard to make movies and television. But I'd have to say The Stand, aside from it being a year out of my life, I was away from home for a full year making that movie, making that miniseries. It was Stephen King's best-selling book, even to this day. And even to this day, the miniseries is the highest rated miniseries in US television history. And that's pretty amazing when people say, oh, you're a filmmaker, what have you done? And you say The Stand. Everybody's seen it and almost everybody liked it. And the reviews were as good as the ratings were. And even more to that, to a certain degree, is although it was not very successful when it came out, I wrote Hocus Pocus. And it has become the quintessential Hollywood horror, Halloween movie, and is way more popular than ever. It gets bigger every year. Merchandise all over the place that Disney is somehow very frugal about sharing the wealth, which they don't. But anytime I meet a female from 5 to 90, and I say I wrote Hocus Pocus, that's my favorite movie.
And there's talk of a sequel, is there not?
There is, and I'm just reading about it from afar. I'm not
Oh, okay,
involved.
you're not involved in that, unfortunately.
No, but I'm usually kept up to date on what's going on. And from the latest news, the three Sanderson sisters will be back, which is something I was hoping all along. And I'm just happy to see their lives continue and feel like a doting daddy, you know.
And is there, I mean, have you got any other projects in the works coming up that we can expect to see from you?
Well, I've always got stuff in the works. You know, the podcast has been off the air for a few months because
Right,
of
yeah.
the disintegration of what happened with Fangoria. But we will be back very soon. We've already recorded 4 new shows. I've just written a new script that I've given to my management just a week or 2 ago. I've written a new series, 2-hour series pilot and an outline that we're taking out to the networks and studios soon. So there's always something going on. And, you know, the band I was in the 70s, an original progressive rock band, put together a bunch of our best recordings and added new instrumentation and new vocals, and we've actually put out our first ever album on CD and all the
See, I should have
streaming.
put Rockstar at the front of the intro as well. I forgot.
Yeah, hardly that. Rockstar is somebody who's famous for their music. But the group was Horse Feathers, and the album Symphony for a Million Mice, and it's on all the streaming things. And we have the CD is available, and it's just like all of these touchstones throughout my life seem to have come to a head in 2020 and being celebrated with Grimmfest here, which is such a complete humbling honor. I can't tell you.
Well, that's very well deserved. And that's a nice segue for me to actually present you with the awards. So, Mr. Mick Garris, I'd like to say on behalf of Grimmfest and Horror Channel and all our viewers, thank you very much for all that you have done, all that you continue to do to work in and push the genre forward for everyone. We're so grateful that you've accepted the award this year, and we couldn't think of a better person to give it to. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for handing that to me.
The long transatlantic.
Yeah, exactly. Well, really, I want to thank Grimmfest and the fans, because the horror community is the most inclusive community of any that I know. And we are bound together in our outsiderness. You know, I think we celebrate being outsiders. We identify with the monsters in the movies that we see. You know, life isn't easy, and horror helps us cope with that. And I could not be part of a more celebrating community than in the horror world, whether it's fiction or film or television or comics, all of that stuff. Some of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life are those creators and the fans within the dark genre. And I can't thank you enough for celebrating the genre as well as the work that I've been lucky enough to do with this. So I thank you so much for that.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. It's all left for me to say, basically, that Sunday, the 10th of October, it was kind of an unofficial Mick Garris Day. Really, I mean, on Horror Channel from 1 p.m. On Saturday the 10th, we will be showing all 4 episodes of The Stand back to back. You can catch that. Yeah, indeed, all 4 in one go. And also from 6:40 p.m. on the same day, you'll be able to catch a live Q&A audience with Mick Garris. That's happening 6:40 p.m. at Grimmfest. If you don't have, that's exclusive to pass holders. So if you don't have a pass to Grimmfest, the best way to go and sort that out is to go to grimmfest.com and get yourself one. And you'll be able to ask some questions directly to Mick yourself. And here's more amazing stories and anecdotes and career highlights than we have time to go into here. So I just want to again say thank you very much, Mick, for accepting our award, for talking with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, and thank you, Stewart, and thank you to Grimmfest and all of the fans. I can't be more appreciative than this. So thank you so much.